Today, we're diving straight into one of the most maddening, thoroughly documented, and honestly, most frustrating unsolved mysteries in American history, the Zodiac Killer. If you're a true crime fan, you already know this case isn't just about the murders themselves. It's about the completely terrifying psychological game this guy played with the entire country. We're gonna break down the verified facts, the confirmed timeline, and the decades of intense investigation into this massive puzzle.
To really grasp the chilling nature of this case, we gotta start on July 4th, 1969, in Vallejo, California. At 12:40 a.m., a man called the local police department. And what makes his confession so deeply unsettling wasn't just the words he used, it was his delivery. His voice was incredibly calm, unhurried, almost polite. He reported a double murder that literally just happened, gave specific details only the killer would know, casually took credit for another unsolved double murder from 6 months prior, and then just hung up.
That single phone call was basically the match that lit an absolute firestorm of police work. I mean, over the course of this investigation, authorities looked into more than 2,500 potential suspects. 2,500! I really want you to think about that staggering number for a second. That's thousands of people investigated, cleared, or left in some weird legal limbo because the evidence just never quite hit the standard required for a prosecution. It really puts the sheer, overwhelming scale of this manhunt into perspective. And despite that absolutely massive effort, here is the most frustrating number of all: 57. It has been 57 years since the first confirmed murders. You've got law enforcement agencies at every single level, including the FBI, poring over this evidence. Technology has evolved leaps and bounds, entire generations of detectives have worked this case, and yet no one has ever been charged.
Section 1, the confirmed attacks, a trail of terror. Okay, let's dive into this.
Before we even look at the letters or the ciphers, we need to ground ourselves in the actual human stakes here. Behind all the media circus and the whole Zodiac mythology, there were real people whose lives were violently ended. Let's walk through the confirmed timeline of his rapid escalation. It started in December 1968 on a dark, quiet stretch of Lake Herman Road where two high schoolers on their first date were shot and killed. 7 months later, July 1969, came the Blue Rock Springs attack, a young mother killed and a 19-year-old survivor. Then, late that year, the killer struck at Lake Berryessa, tying up and repeatedly stabbing a couple. Tragically, the young woman died, but the man survived. Finally, October 1969, the Zodiac drastically shifted his pattern. Instead of targeting couples in isolated lovers' lanes, he shot and killed a taxi driver named Paul Stine right in the affluent Presidio Heights neighborhood of San Francisco.
Now, what's really interesting about his tactics is his brazen theatrical nature. Look, most killers try to avoid detection, right? But the Zodiac actively sought out the spotlight. At Lake Berryessa, he wore this elaborate black executioner's hood stitched with a white cross. He literally took a thick black marker and wrote the dates of his attacks right on a victim's car door. He was keeping score for the police to find. Survivors even noted how he would calmly shoot them, begin to walk away, and then just turn around and shoot again, just to be absolutely sure. And perhaps the most chilling detail, after murdering Paul Stine, the killer actually cut a piece of Stine's blood-soaked shirt to mail to the newspaper as indisputable proof that he was the guy.
Section 2, the taunting letters and breaking the ciphers.
Mailing that piece of bloody fabric marked a huge turning point in the case. The Zodiac wasn't just a killer operating in the shadows anymore. He was kicking off a campaign of psychological warfare against the entire public. Between 1969 and 1974, he sent at least 18 letters to major Bay Area newspapers and private citizens. And these weren't just standard confessions, they were total manipulations. He demanded his coded ciphers be printed on the front pages, threatening a literal kill rampage if the papers didn't comply. He even threatened to shoot the tires out on a school bus and pick off the kids as they came bouncing out. This wasn't some empty media spectacle. This was localized terrorism. Parents kept their kids home from school. Entire regions were just paralyzed by fear. And every single letter started carrying his infamous signature, a crosshair symbol, opening with that incredibly creepy phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking."
Along with his letters, he sent 4 main ciphers, named for the number of characters they contained. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive gap in the time it took to break them. The Z408 was cracked in just a matter of weeks back in 1969, but the Z340? Wow, that took 51 years to break. It was finally solved by amateur codebreakers in 2020. And incredibly, well over half a century later, the Z13 and Z32 remain completely unsolved, just sitting in police evidence files to this very day.
When that first cipher, the Z408, was decoded, everyone was hoping for answers, right? Or maybe an identity. Instead, they got this horrifyingly simplistic motive. I like killing people because it is so much fun. What makes this even more fascinating is that this code wasn't broken by the FBI or top-tier professional cryptographers. No, it was cracked by a high school teacher and his wife, just sitting at their kitchen table in Salinas, California.
Fast forward 51 years to 2020, when the Z340 was finally broken. After 5 decades of anticipation, of everyone hoping the killer had accidentally slipped up and revealed his name or location, the decoded message began with this: "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me." It was an absolutely devastating realization for investigators. After all that time, all that work, the message was nothing more than another taunt.
Section 3. The investigation and the prime suspect.
So with the killer actively mailing letters and rubbing it in the cops' faces, why couldn't they catch him? Well, you have to put yourself back in 1969. The investigation was an absolute logistical nightmare. The murders crossed multiple county lines: Benicia, Vallejo, San Francisco, which meant different police departments with entirely different protocols had to try and share information without the help of modern digital databases. Oh, and modern DNA analysis didn't exist yet. Plus, the killer actively adapted his tactics to stay one step ahead. He wore gloves, mailed letters from completely different locations to avoid helpful postmarks, and even claimed he deliberately altered his handwriting to confuse forensic analysts. He basically studied police tactics and used them as a weapon.
Yet, out of the 2,500 people investigated, one name pretty much always rises to the top: Arthur Lee Allen. The circumstantial evidence against this guy is just overwhelmingly compelling. I mean, Allen literally wore a Zodiac brand watch. He matched the exact shoe size found at one of the crime scenes. A friend even went to the police and said Allen confessed a desire to hunt couples using a gun rigged with a flashlight, which is the exact method the Zodiac used. But then, we hit the forensic reality. In 2002, a partial DNA fingerprint developed from the stamp of a verified Zodiac letter was tested against Allen, and it wasn't a match. So the crucial point is this maddening contradiction. We have the DNA exclusion, sure, but we also have this incredible visual fact from 1991. Michael McGow, the survivor of the Blue Rock Springs attack, the only surviving eyewitness to get a close, actual look at the killer during a shooting, was shown a photo lineup. He pointed directly at Arthur Lee Allen and said, "That's him." 22 years after being shot, he positively identified Allen. But Arthur Lee Allen maintained his innocence right up until he died of a heart attack in 1992. He was never charged, he was never tried.
While Allen totally dominates the conversation, the vacuum of an actual conviction has allowed some other fascinating suspects to surface over the years. In 2021, an investigative group called the Case Breakers proposed a man named Gary Francis Post, pointing to scar patterns and cipher theories, though the FBI never confirmed any of this. Then there was Lawrence Kane, investigated because a brain injury theoretically explained his erratic, violent behavior, and Richard Gaikowski, a journalist who had suspected ties to the crime scenes. Amateur sleuths have produced some really compelling research on all of them, but again, none have been definitively linked to the murders by hard physical evidence.
Section 4. The lingering mystery.
Which brings us to the present day. We have the victims, we have the suspects, and we have an investigation that has literally spanned generations. But there are these anomalies that make this case so uniquely enduring. Just look at this discrepancy. The official reality is 5 confirmed murders and 2 attempted murders connected to the Zodiac. But the killer himself boasted in his letters about murdering 37 people. That gap, 32 potential victims, is absolutely terrifying. Were there dozens of bodies hidden in cold case files across California that police just never connected to the Zodiac because they didn't know what to look for? Or was the claim of 37 victims just another lie? Just one more psychological manipulation to inflate his own ego and keep everyone terrified? We simply don't know.
Because we don't know. The case flat out refuses to fade away. Today in 2026, the case remains officially open in the San Francisco Police Department's Cold Case Division. The big hope now relies entirely on science. Investigators are waiting for advancements in things like environmental DNA testing, hoping that microscopic evidence pulled from a stamp or a piece of clothing might finally yield a true match. And the cultural fascination? It's just as strong as ever. A 2024 Netflix documentary totally reignited interest in the case, and Arthur Lee Allen introducing all this evidence to an entirely new generation of true crime fans.
And that leaves us right here, staring at the final pieces of the puzzle. 2 of the killer's codes, the Z13 and Z32, have sat in evidence files for over 57 years, entirely unbroken. Is the killer's true identity still hiding in there, waiting for someone to finally crack the code? Does the Z13 actually contain his name, like he promised? Or is it deliberately unsolvable, a final, cruel joke at the expense of everyone who has spent their lives trying to catch him? The Zodiac might still be speaking to us through those symbols.